You've just found your grandpa's alchemy equipment. With the right ingredients, you can learn to make magic potions. In no time, you'll be Little Alchemists. Thank you for joining us at Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Melissa Delp.
And I'm Kevin Delp. Today we're looking at Little Alchemists. It's a family-friendly logic deduction game for 2 to 4 players, and it takes about 30 minutes to play. It's published by CGE, and they gave us this copy to review.
So we'll do a quick overview of the gameplay, compare it to Alchemists, and then tell you what we think about the game. Little Alchemists is a logic deduction game suitable for kids and families. There are 7 levels of gameplay that start off as a basic tutorial and then add in more complexity as you go. The main thing you're doing on your turn is combining 2 ingredients to see what kind of potion they make. You record the results on your hidden player board. Using the info you've collected to deduce which potions the ingredients can make will be important in later levels of the game.
During the game, even the tutorial, customers will arrive. If you make the preferred potion, you can sell it to them for money. Money will be worth points at the end of the game. The goal of each game is to earn the most points.
So we kept that overview very brief, and not to spoil any of the secrets and the unlocks, but to really review the game, we'll need to talk about all of the levels. So there will be spoilers sprinkled throughout the rest of this video.
As we move into our thoughts about the game, we're going to separate the sections of the video into the 5 C's. Our thoughts about components, comparisons to the Alchemists game, our critiques, our commendations, and finally, our conclusions. So let's jump into components.
Well, first off, we should mention that this game requires an app.
Yeah.
This is a free download with the companion app. We used it on Android.
Right.
It's also on iOS and other systems.
Yeah, so there's also a player screen that is pretty good. It's like a cardboard screen that you can have all your things behind it that you need to be scanning things and doing things. So it's more than just a piece of paper. I mean, there's a lot going on behind the screen.
Right, and the ingredients are tiles, and the tiles slot into a top piece on that screen. And I didn't have any trouble with my tiles falling out or anything like that, so I thought it was pretty sturdy.
Nope. The boxes are going to be a big thing in Little Alchemists, and you're going to be unlocking things. The whole bottom of the box has the 7 different boxes that you'll be unlocking.
Unlocked! And with that, the rule book also has seals, so like little stickers that look like wax seals, so you can't like look too much forward unless you purposefully break the seals. So that was an extra fun little element of, we're opening box 1, we also get to break the seal on the rule book.
All right, let's move into our comparison to the game Alchemists.
All right, so we better get some Alchemists up here. Kevin and I, we both really enjoy the game Alchemist. One of our favorites.
Yeah,
from
I think
CGE.
It's on my top 10 of all time. I have to redo that list. It's been around for a little while, probably 8 years. It's probably time for a new top 10. I don't know if it's still be in my top 10 or not, but it's definitely up there. So just starting off, we really enjoy the game Alchemists.
Right. Now, Alchemists is a much, much heavier, more involved, complex game than Little Alchemists. You have, not only do you have the deduction aspect of scanning ingredients, but there's this whole sort of worker placement-esque board with lots of different actions to get the ingredients, to sell the potions, to test the potions out. There's bad things that can happen depending on what type of potion you make. Yeah. So it's like a 2-hour plus game.
Yeah. And very, very thinky with the logic deduction. And it's turn order really matters in this game. You really want to be first. In some cases, sometimes you want to be later in turn order because of you'll be able to place your actions out. So there's a lot going on with just more than just what's going on in Little Alchemists.
Yes. So this is like 10 to 15 steps more complex than Little Alchemists.
Right. So Little Alchemists, so in Alchemists, the whole game is you are scanning these ingredients together to figure out their like alchemical formula. They are taking that small part of the game, which is a integral part to the game.
Important, yes.
Yeah, important part. And they're taking that and they're basically dividing it out. And they're starting you small. And they're putting that in the Little Alchemist. So you're starting with box 1, very simple, and then you're gradually unlocking not only boxes, but you're unlocking more of
components, mechanisms, even
what's going on.
More ingredients. So the deduction becomes a little bit more complex. But yes, Little Alchemist distills that part of this game into that. So even when you get to the last box of Little Alchemist, you're not playing Alchemist.
No,
there's no board, there's no action selection. Right. Even I would say that the final level of deduction is simpler. When you've unlocked box 7, it's still not quite to the level of Alchemist.
Sure, right. I would agree. Yeah. Just double checking to make sure my mind.
He's thinking through this.
Because there's a lot, but there's a lot that they did include once you get to box 7.
Mm-hmm.
So the deduction part, I think, we just need to let you know, the deduction part is the core of this game. It's the core of this game, but deduction part is pretty much all this game has. Whereas this game, it
has a lot more going on.
A lot more going on with worker placement. We've mentioned this before. So comparison to the two, if you want that more full experience of a worker placement game with part deduction, then you're looking for this. If you're looking for like
just the deduction,
deduction, we'll go that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in our concluding thoughts.
And maybe not just deduction, but mainly deduction, I would say.
Sure, mainly deduction. All right, let's roll into our critiques. So, critique number 1: we got this game early.
Right.
So there are some things that the app is still developing on the app, so it's a little buggy for us. Now, I will say we played through all 7 different boxes, and it actually felt like the later games were less buggy. I don't know why, but it seemed like the first 1 or 2 games was super buggy. But games like 3 through 7, I don't think I had any problems.
I didn't have any issues. Now,
and we each downloaded the app on our phone, so we weren't passing our phone around or anything like that.
Yeah. Like Kevin said, the app is still under development, so it does have these cute little cutscenes and animations, but those were only available for the first level or 2. Maybe that's why it was buggy, because it had more of the stuff in it. But I am fully confident that they will get the app to a good level.
Sure. I just let people know, you are using an app. Sometimes apps are buggy.
Yep.
So, one of the things, a little critique for me, is you are unlocking. I want to just, if I play a game and it gives me this, and I'm like, oh, that was cool, or I'm ready for the next thing, there is a time in the game, in the campaign, where it really will like make you play the same game again.
If you follow the rules of unlocking.
If you're following the rules like Melissa always does.
So basically you're collecting key stickers, and once you have stickered all of the key slots on a box, you can open it. But in some of the later games,
it's impossible to...
Right, you can't get enough keys in a single game to unlock the box.
We skipped it, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm just taking all the keys and putting them on the box, right? Because I'm like, I know what this level is. I know what level 4 is. I don't want to play level 4 again. I want to go to level 5. And we'll talk about like replayability a little bit later. I think the game is replayable. For me, when I'm going through the campaign, I just don't want to play the same game again for the simplicity of what it was, especially the lower levels.
Right. So for us, reviewing the games, wanting to play through all of it, we did not park out at certain levels and play multiple games. And then we pushed forward to the next level. Yeah. And having played Alchemists and already understanding the deduction, it was pretty simple for us to do that. Yeah. Now, if you have a family and kids especially, it may be helpful to really ingrain, this is what we've added this time. Let's make sure we all understand that, and then move on to the next. But I think if you're playing with all adults, especially adults who are already good with logic puzzles, then you probably don't need to hang out at the same level.
And there's probably a point where you go through all the levels, and like Melissa and I have, and we're going to play it with some of our other friends in Tantrum House, and we're going to be like, we're just going to introduce them. We're not going to start in game 1. We'll start in game 4 or something like that, and which we have the ability to do.
Mm-hmm.
I just wondering like how other people will handle that.
Right. And I haven't explored the app enough. Can you jump into a later level, or do you have to progress through them?
Great question.
I mean, now that we've unlocked it all, we can.
Yeah.
But your first time through, I'm not sure if you can say, oh, I want to start off at level 3 without actually at least going through the motions and clicking through things. Mm-hmm. I don't know the answer to that.
One of the boxes, I think, is pretty early on, like levels 2 or 3, introduces pets into the game. And it sounds really cool, like, oh, I get this sort of like pet.
Very cute. It's a cat or an owl.
Yeah, I think they are cute. I honestly felt like after playing all 7 games that it was just a add-on that didn't really impact my gameplay. Basically, pets give you extra coins, which are giving you points, but it seemed like it was just adjacent to what I'm trying to do.
I think the pets are definitely for the kids and families, and kind of gives them something else kind of cute and like, oh, my owl wants green potions, I'm going to try to make green potions. Okay. Sort of idea. Again, I think it's more for the kids.
Because if you just focus on that and you're like, oh, I want to make green potions, then you probably are going to miss out on the actual game on figuring out the alchemical formulas, which you need to do in order to figure out how everything works.
And Kevin approaches almost every game like a race.
No, not every game.
Most games. This one does have like a race.
Every game just happens to be deduction games. I'm like, what am I trying to deduce? I'm trying to figure it out. So there is I don't know, and now I know.
Right. So we definitely sped through the games and didn't like try to get a whole lot more coins and things, because once
she knew she couldn't do it.
Once the dominoes start falling, you have to like make those theories, because if you get to it first, you get more points than the other players.
Yeah, so a small critique I'll put on myself. Mm-hmm. If a player like me is like, oh, like I know that these ingredients make these formulas, I'm going to start making those formulas, and that triggers into the game. Mm-hmm. And if someone like Melissa wants to explore a little bit more, the game could be over, and she's like, oh, I never got to do that where I was doing small.
Yeah, so it really depends on your game group. I think if you're playing a family, if you're playing with kids, it would probably go longer, and maybe there would be more customers that come out, and the pets would be used more. But we're like, okay, we've done 4 turns. Now we can figure out all the deduction.
Everything. I can figure out everything. But that's in the lower games. The higher, the boxes 6 and 7, there was a lot more going on. Just because there's more ingredients, there's more formulas, all that. So it took a little bit longer.
So because it is a deduction game, you can go down wrong paths of deduction. I had one game where...
I felt so bad, but I'm like, I can't help you.
I know. I accidentally put one of my tokens in the wrong slot. Either I thought I had done the chicken foot and the mandrake, and I put it...
I think you might have just put the formula, or the...
Right, the token. So I got a green potion. I knew I had a green potion. I put it in. I figured out all 3 of the potions that a certain thing would make. I made a theory, and it told me I was wrong. And I'm looking down at my board, and I said, it's green, it's the
ghost.
Wings, and it's the ghost.
Yep.
It should be right.
And then she asked me, and I'm like, nope.
So, I mean, that is my fault, because I did it wrong, but
you could really
it threw off
everything else.
And because we're playing it as a race game, it's hard to get back into it, because you've kind of wasted time, you get some negative points, and Kevin's speeding ahead.
Not speeding, I'm just taking the game for the logic deduction.
But I love logic games. So it's just inherent in any logic game.
And I will say there was another logic game, not these two, that we played with another company, and I made a boo-boo. And I will say it was my fault, but it did impact pretty much the rest of that game for me because I didn't have
Once you make one wrong assumption, it
Right.
can trickle down to other
Or
things.
just not even assumption, you just make the wrong clerical error. So you have to be careful with that. All right, I think that's enough on the critiques.
Okay.
Let's move to commendations. I really do like, and I think we mentioned this before, the core of this game is figuring out the formulas and what the ingredients make. Like, okay, I have the frog, and like what 3 things make up the frog. That thing really is a cool part of the game, and trying to explain to people how that works is very interesting. Not only to me, but trying to explain to people. I think it's like that aha moment on how all these things work together. They took that, and that's what Little Alchemists is. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's a good introduction to logic in general, and then specifically the logic puzzle that is Alchemists and Little Alchemists. We have mentioned it, but it starts off really basic, and then you keep adding to it, and you even physically add to your player board. So that's
really like
cool.
that.
It's like a little puzzle piece that you put onto the 2 different sides to make it a little bit more complex. So some of those unlocks were interesting, exciting, bringing it closer to what we were used to in regular Alchemists.
I also like that when a player does guess a formula, they sort of show what they made to other players, and the other players can guess what they think made that formula. And if they do guess correctly, then they're going to get a reward. They're going to get a coin out of it. So I think that's a little catch-up mechanic, if you want to say.
Yeah, it gives you a little something.
A little benefit, because you actually do need coins sometimes to get what you like, a specific.
You can spend coins to take a specific ingredient off the main board, because you're like, oh, I really need to know what this feather does. I don't have any feathers in my hand. I could spend a coin to get a feather, so then I can test it.
And I will say with that, the base game of the game this is you're just getting ingredients all the time. It's easy because at the end of your turn you're just drawing back up. In Alchemist, you have to purchase ingredients.
You have to take actions.
You have to take actions, and it does feel a little bit more laborsome.
There's more steps you have to go through.
This one's like, here's all the ingredients you want. Now, that's where you need coins. Like, oh, I need the feather, or I need this.
Once I had 3 toads in my hand. I'm like, this isn't going to help me. I can spend a coin to get a chicken foot, or get a mushroom, or whatever, to then be able to test something significant.
I think the logic deduction, I think we mentioned this a bunch of times, but I think we need to hit it home one more time.
Okay.
So, when you are actually making a deduction, and that will just, to me, is when you figure out one thing, then it could impact another thing, and then that thing, you make a thing, make an ingredient, a formula, and that works together, or it doesn't work together. You start making all these other connections. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, because there's only a certain number of ingredients that can make certain potions. So once you've narrowed it down, you can start eliminating other things. Like, oh, there's only 3 that have the ghosts. If I already know those 3, then the others are not going to make a ghost. Or you get to the last game, and then there's this board that shows you how things connect, and it's even more of, oh, if this one and this one connect, it'll make that. I don't know all of those ingredients yet, or potions yet, but I can make a pretty good deduction that it is these things because of how they all combine and interweave.
And 2 more things based on that. One is sometimes you get it down to 50-50. I'm the type of player.
Kevin's the type to...
I'm like, it's either this or this. I'm going to guess. Because then if I guess wrong, I might get a little negative, but then I know that the other one is correct. And I would say through all 7 games, I think I was 50-50.
I never made a theory unless I was
100% sure.
100%.
Are you sure about that?
That maybe after you messed up, or we had one of those guesses,
Right.
then I would know.
Right.
Yeah.
There is another way when you're adding ingredients together. It's going to show you usually a color potion that it makes. There is later in the games, and in this game, in the base, or I say base game, in the original Alchemist game, it would say like a null, and it would say there's nothing that matches. Well, they bring that in, I think, in game 6 or 7. And I'm like, that to me is a really cool part of the game, because if they don't match, that means that if a ingredient has red, green, and blue in it, that means the other one has none of those in it. So that means then it's got to have these other ones in it. So then you're just, I love how we mentioned the connections, but how that all sort of works together. Because then if you do know this one and figure it out, then you automatically know what the other one is, because none of them match.
Yeah, so as you can tell, we enjoy deduction games and enjoy the deduction element in here. So I think we're moving into our conclusions.
Yeah, conclusions.
Of the game.
So I would say if you've played Alchemist before, you probably don't need to play Little Alchemists. But if you've never played Alchemists, like if you have no idea what we're talking about and you're watching this video like this is making no sense, then you need to play Little Alchemists first. I think this will actually help you play this game so much better. And I know there are people, our friend groups, that have not played this. I will actually probably introduce this game to them so that someday maybe we'll play this one.
Yeah, basically my thoughts were pretty much in line with Kevin's of, I love Alchemist. I think for me, Alchemist, the meatier, heavier, longer game is what I would want to play. We have not played this game in forever because we don't have friends who already know how to play it, and it is a heavy game to try to teach. The learning curve is like blows people's minds. I demoed this a couple of years.
I love demoing it.
At Gen Con for CGE.
I think it's awesome.
And it is hard to kind of have people wrap their mind around the deduction and then everything else that's going on in the game.
Yeah, because you're playing a game within a game with like all this stuff going on with that worker placement.
You have to understand how everything interconnects, and it can be difficult. So, even though I love Alchemist and I think it's a great game, this one is one that we would probably play more often because it's like a 30-minute game.
Or less.
When playing with Mr. Speedy here.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of walks you through the steps. So it scaffolds the information where like, oh, I understand element A. Now let's add the next complex element, and you can bit by bit work up to that higher deduction level instead of throwing you into the deep end and being like, hope you can figure out the deduction.
Yeah.
So I think for us, Little Alchemists would probably get played more because it's simpler, it's easier to get into, it's a quicker game.
Yeah.
But I do love my Alchemists.
So get Little Alchemists, and then we're talking about this game in the video. Get Little Alchemists if you want to have a game that has the deduction, logic deduction, and it does it well. Like, it introduces that concept to your children or to other family members, your friends, and it's not just, I'm trying to think of other logic deduction games, it's just different, and I appreciate that it's a different type of logic deduction.
Yeah, I mean, you still have a lot of the time where you're kind of looking at your own player board and you're scanning it yourself, but there's a little bit of interaction because you tell people, I made a green potion. Now, they don't know that you used the chicken foot and the frog to do it, but people know, oh, Kevin knows how to make a green potion. Oh, a green customer just came up. Kevin might be, trying to get some more coins.
Right.
Or in later games where you're trying to figure out which ingredient makes the green, blue, red, oh, Kevin may know some of that information.
And we didn't mention it, but in later games, because you are actually trying to figure out the formulas for all the different ingredients, when you make a correct guess, I mean, you have the ability to also guess, but you're actually putting that chicken foot on that. So now everyone knows that chicken foot is made up of these three. So you then helping your own board out to help figure things out.
Yeah, you learn stuff from other people and what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's not completely head down like some other deduction games.
Yeah. So check it out from CGE. We would love for you to like this video and subscribe to our channel.
Yes, and let us know what are your favorite deduction games. I might do a deduction video at some point because I love them so much.